I was wrong in doing what I did. No, no, no! Are you listening?
No, I'm 87.
Sean here. It is difficult sometimes for people to look at their own life, and sometimes difficult to look at a family member or a friend's life and help them figure out exact moment where they went from the big interstate to a side road, Route 22AB, farm lane, cattle drive, that's like a one-lane road with a high fatality rate. We tend to put value on things in our life that are honestly insignificant. We put a lot of importance and a lot of value, and when we don't see it returned, we feel angry or sad, or just a sense of loss. And that's not even the mistake that you made. That's just a symptom, but it was something you couldn't address the bigger picture, so you addressed that. We'll just leave it right there. I hope that makes sense. And it didn't work out. But we're talking about the big turn. With Lorne, we know it's not the sting. We know it's not the conviction. We know it's not the Ramona saga, Winnie, any of the catfish women. No. He was doing what he was doing way before the sting. His started, I think, probably the first time he figured out he could get away with something by crying. We know Lorne. 1 out of 99, 1 out of 100 times, it works. 99 times, it doesn't. Tell Lorne the definition of insanity, the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And Lorne would say, well, it worked that one time. And that's what he would go back to. It worked that one time because I told you, he's the guy. Well, my friend had an aunt. She smoked. She lived to be 92. Now, granted, her quality of life was terrible. She was on oxygen and she could barely walk because her bones were brittle and everything else. But you're right, Lorne. She lived a hellish existence until she was 92. That's just who he is. Another thing that probably contributed to it was the first time he made a huge mistake and he was let off the hook. The worst thing you can do for a loved one, I'm talking family, friends, whoever, somebody you care about, they don't even have to be friends, is to not give them tough love. Is to let them make those mistakes. And because it's difficult for you, you just tell them, hey, that's life, man. Just get yourself up. Dust yourself off and keep moving. What you've done is completely skipped over that entire scenario. They didn't have to go back once and look at what happened. It's the same thing, and I know people need to hear this, so please don't flame me in the comments. It's the same thing as telling people when one door closes, another opens. Or, when one window is open, birds can fly in and out. You're not stuck in that room. I've heard people say this dumb shit before because, hey, I live in a redneck state. You have to encourage people to figure out why that door closed. And then you have to encourage them to make sure they go through the right door. And if it's the one that opened and it's not the right door, they don't need to go through it yet. It's just mistakes people make. And again, nobody wanted to deal with Lorne, I'm sure, and they probably told him, hey, you know what, Lorne? It'll be better next time, buddy. Just try a little bit harder. Okay. Shit, I don't have to do anything. All right? Let me figure out the least I can do and still get away with things. I still believe that Lorne didn't get his diploma until after graduation. There were 3 people in this community. One of them I trusted that also said this independently. And I think, in my opinion, he had to do extra credit work, and it got him to graduate. Well, not to graduation, but the diploma. Normally, I wouldn't care about that. It's high school, man. Nobody cares. It's freaking high school. It's how well you do when you get out, when the real world hits you in the face. I just had that conversation with my daughter who graduated. When you get out, all of this stuff being trapped in this little compound and the cliques and everything, it's the same thing as a prison, only a little less violent. Although nowadays, maybe not. Except you're in a classroom and you're not in the rec room or the yard. And I joke with my son and I say, look, man, a 10 in high school is like a 7 in real life. Because you have a limited selection in there to choose from, male or female. And you get out, and the world's a big place. And there are a lot of beautiful people out there. It always brings a smile to his face whenever he's having trouble at school, or he's at the age right now where he's awkward. He feels like he's awkward, and we have that discussion. I don't want my son to make those mistakes. And I want to stress to him, he said something to me the other day, like he had a failing grade at some point this year, earlier in the year, because he hadn't turned his work in. And he said, well, so-and-so has 3 Fs, and he's cool. And I just almost snapped. I said, you know what F is? A failure. Don't call my friend a failure. Your friend is a failure because he's failing. And he just looked at me like stunned, like, oh. And I know that was harsh. And I don't know his friend, and I didn't really care. But I wanted him to know it's a failing grade for a reason. It means you are a failure in that class. And I think Lorne was never told that. I think Lorne always skated by with a little bit of extra credit. And it's Cornville. And if there really were only 87 people in his class, or whatever it was, even if there was a couple hundred, the teachers probably knew who most of the students were. Probably knew their parents. Had talked to them, wanted to see them out in town. I'll work with him, Janine, or Gwen, whatever. I'll work with him, Janine. We'll get little Tommy. We'll get him through there. He's just struggling a little bit. And I think Lorne skated by. I think he fell through the cracks. And what happened when Lorne got out in the real world? He had no idea what he was doing. That picture of him when he was in the Air Force, I'm just looking at this guy and I'm thinking to myself, you are a dork. And I can just look at you and say, I don't want you on my team, man. I don't want you in my squad or platoon. I don't want you in any of that. I can just look at you and see, as my drill instructor would say, shitbird. Now, am I being harsh? Yes. And probably am I a little biased because I know what happened? Yes. But I don't think there was ever a time in Lorne's life I would look at him and say, now that guy looks successful. Because even the best con men, they're successful at being con men. They know how to dress the part. They know how to talk. They know how to blend in socially. If you told Lorne, you just need to play the game. Lorne doesn't even know where the board is. He doesn't even know what the rules are or what the pieces are. So he got out there. This cretin got out in the real world, and everything hit him all at once. I can hear Roy right now probably talking him into, I'd love to interview Roy. Like a real interview. Put him at ease, and then start asking questions. Roy's the kind of guy you'd have to make feel a little bit more important than he is. You'd have to ask him, Roy keeps things short, you know how he talks, right? I still don't know what he was doing, by the way, when Lorne put the crown on and Roy was going, I don't know if that was like a cartoon character that they had in Cornville he was imitating, where it's a king that you couldn't understand. I don't know. But anyway, you'd have to ask Roy a lot of questions to get the answer you wanted. And you'd probably have to ask the same question, reworded many, many times. I would love to ask him if he had anything to do with talking Lorne into starting that business. If he didn't want to siphon money off of him somehow. I don't know. And what I really think, though, if you want me to be truthful, is that Lorne wouldn't help Roy. He's always been jealous of Roy. Lorne would give money to his brothers and sisters to prove he wasn't the epic failure that everybody knew him to be. I'm sure, now knowing now about them, that they didn't ask him for money. He heard them talking about it and came to the rescue and gave somebody else's money away. The dude obviously hasn't had any real relationships. No one's formed one with him. I think his only relationships have been like his Aunt Sharon, Uncle Clay, or Aunt, wherever you're from. Anyway, the bottom line is I don't think he's had any real meaningful relationships whatsoever. I can only imagine what Lorne was like in the cafeteria, trying to sit with everybody and then going, here comes this smelly dude again. My God. But you know what? It's Cornville. Chances are there were at least 15 other kids like Lorne, and he probably hung out with them. If he rode the bus, I mean, dear God, those poor people on the bus, as Lorne's, look at me, look at me. I just don't feel like he ever formed any real relationships with anyone meaningful. Otherwise, we know he would never treat women the way he does, especially if he thought he had a relationship with them. Now, chances are, if we dated, I'd probably get mad at you. But I don't think I'm gonna rage at you and do what he does. I would cool off. I would let the emotion go away. Figure out what it is that actually made me angry. Figure out whether or not it was worth talking about. Did I overreact? I would ask myself all these questions. Lorne has never had to ask himself these questions. Ever. As Coach John said, never, not one time. I just don't think Lorne's had a real meaningful relationship. And because of that, we know he hasn't had examples of what success looks like. So I think sometime around high school is where Lorne crashed and burned. The only place where people talked to him because they were confined in the same area, where adults showed interest in him. Maybe he said something clever one time. One of the teachers made a comment to him. And I've known teachers who doted on students for a student doing one thing, and then they coasted on that for the year. Good for them, man. One of them's name was Mark. I high-fived him. You got to teach me how to do that, man. But I think that's probably what happened. So when Lorne stepped out of high school, and his mom was like, kid, Uncle Clay, can you please give him somewhere to live? I need him out of this house. He's old enough now where he should move on. And we know Lorne, he probably stuck in there as long as possible. Mom, I need to be here. I need to be here to help you. So when he did get booted out, you probably wanted people to come over. Let me show you my apartment. I mean, just imagine. I'm sorry, I got to go off here for a second. Imagine this pug mucker sitting in his basic apartment, inviting people over. Right here's the bedroom. There's a bathroom right there. And there's the kitchen. I mean, it's attached to the bedroom. But anyway, you can see this here. And then, of course, we got those pictures of where he was living in Nashville. But I'm talking about when he got out. And he probably did think he was going to be this big shot, this big star. Lorne didn't have a plan. His big plan was to be in a karaoke bar. And it didn't pan out for him. And he probably believes that something happened and he was just too good and they didn't want to sign him, or somebody else's kid got signed. You never know with him, the way his brain works. But he put value on things he should have never put value on. He should have gotten a job, gotten out there, tried to get himself stable, get a day job, and then at night practice your singing, your songwriting, use people at work, bring in a recording and say, hey, if you get a second, find somebody to listen to it, and learn when they're just saying, oh yeah, I'll do it, and just trying to be nice. He put value on things that didn't matter. And when he started a company, I don't even know what that whole situation was. I don't know what to believe. It's Lorne Armstrong. But when he started that company, he probably enjoyed being able to tell people, hey, I started this company. To anyone who would listen, I am sure this guy probably told them how much money he got for a job. Lorne's the kind of guy who would walk up to a millionaire. I got paid $500 a week for mowing that lawn. That's one lawn. Now imagine what would happen and this is Lorne, we know it. Now imagine what would happen 12 lawns a week. Huh? That's $6,000 a week. Do you have 12 lawns a week, Lorne? Well, I'm doing one, It's a big one, it's a big one. You can hear all this shit. But this is the result of the way he was raised and the things in his life that just added up to this epic failure who is now closing in on 60. has no retirement, no real job, no real connections, no real friends, nothing to show for it except a trailer that is literally falling down around him. And I'm telling you, it will look like one of the hobbit holes in the Shire. It will have collapsed down, and you'll be able to get into parts of the kitchen, and he'll be like, you know what, it works, I know it needs some work, but I can live here. But to get to that point, you have to have just given up. Convinced yourself that you're going to make it big one day, but you've actually given up. You're not going to try. You're not going to do what you think you know what you want to do. I want to make a movie, because I knew a guy who talked about a movie forever. Gonna make a movie. He never made the movie, and he ended up dead without ever chasing any of his dreams. You just want to look at him and say, Lorne, you're 54 or whatever he is, and dude, if you were to try to make it in the music career, let's say you put out a plan and it's 5 years, that's going to put you at 59 if you're 54 right now, Lorne. You're going to be 59 years old, possibly just getting like an independent distribution at that age, or putting yourself on, I don't even know what they are anymore, Tune something. His ass is definitely not going on Apple. We know that. Time, he's never managed it. He's never understood it. He's never looked up how long it actually takes, what the odds are for something to happen. What do you do when it happens? He's never done it. Ever. And he'll never do it. And all of that is a result, I think, of people just not wanting to deal with this asshole. Not wanting to take the time and sit him down and have to talk to a brick wall about, you need to change your life. And what he's thinking is, I need to get out of here because I want to go do that thing that I want to do. Even if it's exactly what they're telling me what not to do right now. I think a lot of people didn't give up on Lorne. They just didn't want to deal with him. There's a big difference. Giving up on somebody, especially to somebody like me, and from what it sounds like, a lot of you, it would take a lot. Especially if we see promise in somebody. Especially, I didn't see any value in myself for a while, but somebody did. And because of that, I rose from the ashes. Not like I was a phoenix, but I returned to normal. I joined society again. I got a good job. I was successful at that job, and it was because they believed in me, and they saw something in me, even when I didn't see it. You guys encourage each other a lot. I mean, I'm sure I'm the butt of a lot of jokes. If I couldn't handle it, I wouldn't be putting videos out. But you encourage each other. And I respect everyone for that. Could you do that to a guy like Lorne? Take away, pretend you didn't know he's a pedo. But you know how he talks to women because you're around him. And you're trying to coach him and guide him. And you're trying to tell him not to act like that. And talk to him about being paranoid and a rage monster. He'd be like, yeah, I know, but, it's hard, Lorne, you need to quit smoking. Yeah, I'm trying. You would get that for everything you spoke to him about. But I think a lot of us would still try. And I think Lorne is the guy that you would feel like a failure because you just couldn't get through to him. He's the guy who would string you along so you would talk to him until he actually had to do something, put something into action, put effort into something, and then he would run. He would ghost you. I just think that during his lifetime, they didn't take the time to give him tough love. They didn't take the time to explain to him what life is about. I think they just wanted him the hell out of the house, get out of our life. I don't want to deal with you anymore. Roy was probably ecstatic because he seems like he got a brother who wanted Lorne out of the way so he could start, mooching off Mom. I don't know for sure, but both of those guys we know go over and made Mama Gwen's life hell. It's Lorne's fault. Because if he's not successful, he should have gone out and done some research. What do I need to do? He should have made him say, hey, if I'm smarter and I try to become peerless, I try to be knowledgeable, that will probably help me out in the long run, especially when it comes to getting jobs. But he didn't. He's content to be probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, defaulting on everything. I don't even know if he has a working vehicle, living in a hobbit hole of trash and filth, and dying alone. It's depressing, but that seems to be where he's at. And he seems to be okay with it. And he will always think there's a woman right around the corner. There's something right around the corner that's going to make his life complete. He's going to achieve his dream with no goals, no path, and he's going to keep taking the wrong turn off the wrong turn off the wrong turn off the wrong turn until he goes off a bridge and he can never recover. Anyway, that's my going off for today. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah,